Jimmy Dura, host of All Things Veterinary, a podcast that connects and unites the animal health community with ideas and innovation, topics to inspire you and energize your day. Today, we will be joined by our guest, Sarah Zabel, who is one of our behind-the-scenes rock stars to discuss one of our most popular and important topics, anesthesia, support, and troubleshooting. Sarah is our lead support specialist at the Patterson Anesthesia Hotline. She began as a veterinary technician in the field in 2009 as a CVT and joined Patterson in 2016. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Good to have you on. Looking forward to our conversation today. Anesthesia is one of those topics that is near and dear to my heart. Kind of got started in the industry with anesthetics and anesthesia machines. And so it's always been something I've gravitated towards in the clinic. So really excited to have you on today. Would you first kick us off and kind of tell us what drew you to anesthesia in your career?
Well, I've always enjoyed anesthesia, like even in school, in practice, the technical aspect of it, caring for the patients. My big thing when I was in practice was making sure the patients were as comfortable as possible throughout the whole process. And also making sure that they're always at a good plane of anesthesia when they were under, and that obviously along with the doctors that their pain control was where it needed to be. So I've always really liked that. Obviously the technical aspect of it, I've always really enjoyed placing catheters, intubation, drug calculations, all that goes along with anesthesia. I've also really enjoyed monitoring anesthesia and not just watching a monitor from another room or even in the same room, but always having your hands on the patient and making sure they're doing okay. So that's always been really important to me. And I think it's also important to understand why you're doing something. Why is this important versus this is just what you do and that's what you do. So understanding the why behind things is important, and troubleshooting on the phone, I hope to convey that to customers as well.
That's awesome. And it sounds like you've kind of gravitated towards things that a lot of folks in practice are uncomfortable with. The calculations and monitoring in general. And so that's neat. Was it just something that was interesting to you, or was it a specialized training that you went through, or a mentor perhaps?
So when I was in tech school, I always enjoyed it. It's challenging, and just because you enjoy something doesn't mean it's easy. It's usually challenging. But I did really like lab stuff in school as well. But this is just something I liked, and I felt like was comfortable for me. And I have always been somebody as a caretaker. So just making sure, because, dogs, cats, they come in, they're nervous, most of them. They don't know what's going on. So it's something that I always really like to make sure that I could comfort them as well and doing what I need to be doing. And so it's important to know, like, if you're doing a drug calculation, that you're pulling up the right amount of drugs, you're administering the right amount of drugs. So there's no patient harm that way. They're actually getting some pre-anesthesia before you do intubation. So that stuff's important, but I guess it's just something I always liked. I've always liked science, not necessarily the best at it, but I've always really enjoyed it. When I got out of school, work in a really busy, it was like a 6-doctor practice, and we did surgery every single day, and multiple surgeries, anywhere between, I'd say 5 to 10 a day, on top of usually 3 to 5 dentals. We also did orthopedics. So I just was really lucky to be in a environment where I could learn a lot from the people around me and grow that way. So just a little shout out to my first vet clinic.
Very cool. I mean, nothing replaces that experience, numbers, repetitions, to get comfort with something like, anesthesia administration and monitoring and all that. I think that's kind of a big thing in a lot of clinics, is maybe they don't have the volume of surgeries or, the repetitions and, casework. Maybe it's not even every day. So it's not a routine that they get in and a habit and, experience, et cetera. So that's cool. That's really neat. I think it sounds like you and I came from cut from the same cloth on the monitoring aspect of eyes and hands.
Yeah.
Arms linked away from the patient. Can't replace yourself and your ability to take blood pressures and monitor respirations, et cetera. That doesn't monitors, equipment monitors don't replace you, the technician, whoever's in, anesthesiologist or the anesthesia monitor, I should say, of that procedure. So
Right. And monitor is not always going to tell you the depth of anesthesia your patient's at. Are they too deep? Are they too light? So that's really important too.
I think that's a good, segue into hearing. We'd love for you to tell us about the anesthesia hotline service. Patterson, of course, is the sponsor of this podcast, and this is a service that many know about, but some may not. So would you kind of tell us about the hotline service and anesthesia hotline service and what you do there and kind of what it's all about?
Yeah. So anyone can call in, whether you're a customer or not. So it's if you bought something from us or if you're a potential customer, it doesn't really matter. You can call in. We're going to help you. We're not going to ask you, are you a customer? What's your account information? None of that.
You don't ask for a credit card to begin the
No,
call? Okay.
none
Just
of that.
clarifying.
I mean, if we're going to help you order something, we might, need
Yeah,
that
maybe.
information, but usually not.
Okay.
Troubleshoot anesthesia machines, monitors, a lot of time different oxygen hookups, other gas hookups as well. Big thing we do besides troubleshooting all that other stuff is helping find part numbers. So if you need a new ECG lead for your monitor or a part for your anesthesia machine or oxygen, any of that stuff, we can help find that. O2 setups we do as well. So I know with like a lot of new builds or existing hospitals, they either renovating or they just need to replace an oxygen hose. We can help get that built. We will ask probably for pictures just to ensure we get you exactly what you need. But that's another thing we offer. And then vaporizer service, kind of going over the options and how it works, pricing, all of that, and why you should do it. So
Excellent. So it's an 800 number folks can call, and you've also got an email
yes.
inbox to field inquiries as well, correct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if it's something that I just want to place a vaporizer exchange, you can always just email us that information and we get the order going. If you leave us a voicemail, we will call you back. Usually we try to do that with, as soon as possible. It's usually the same day, unless it's the end of day. We may not get to it till the next morning, but
Sure.
whatever works best for our customers.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes. And it's fair to say, an emergency call, it's hit or miss. Like, folks should know that if I have a patient on the table and an issue arises, the clinic can try you, or a sales rep could try you, but that's probably not ideal, is what I'm gathering.
Not usually.
Okay.
So, especially if it's an emergency situation, like my patient, we get these calls sometimes. My patient is light. I don't know what to do. Well, you need to stabilize your patient first, which is going to be, your veterinarian is going to be telling you, hey, go pull up this drug, or I need you to do this. So you can stabilize your patient, finish up your procedure, and then call us, because everyone's kind of in panic mode. It's hard to discuss what's going on. And obviously the number one priority is patient safety. So let's get them in a good place before we do troubleshooting on the equipment. Sometimes rarely they call and they're panicked, and it's something as simple as your canister's not on correctly. So just adjust it a little bit. It's super rare. It's better that we call back when everyone's settled, the patient is in a safe place, and we can go over things to see, okay, what happened? Let's do some testing and go from there.
That makes sense. I'd say you and others on the team, this service has been, I'd say, in place for well over a decade, 15 years, maybe longer. I mean, it's been a long time.
It's been a while. Yeah. I mean, when I came in, there was already two people before me. So
Yeah. And I'd say that it's grown in popularity. And right now it's you and one or two other folks maybe fielding calls. So the volume is high. It's not that you wouldn't take an emergency call. It's just you're on the phone most of the day, from my experience.
correct. So yeah, right now there's only two of us fielding calls for the
Yeah.
whole country. So we're not just one part of the country, the whole country. So just a little bit of patience, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. But yeah, there's a lot of calls, a lot of emails that we're trying to field as fast as we can.
What would you say, really quick, random question, is the percentage of calls from clinic side and percentage of calls from sales reps per se?
It depends on the day.
Yeah.
Mostly, I would say mostly clinics, But we do get a lot of calls from our service techs that are in the field, just, hey, I got a question or I need a part number. Same with reps giving us a call, or maybe they need to order an oxygen line because they're in the clinic and we need a new hose. Can you build this for us and get it shipped out? It's a good mixture of both, more hospitals, I would say, than our own representatives, because a lot of times if they are calling, it's because they are on site and they need help. They want to help the customer now.
Yeah.
Versus usually if the customer sends them a question, they'll just forward it on to us if it's a part number, or, hey, can you call them? We'll get emails mostly from.
Fair. I owe you a public debt of gratitude and thanks for taking my calls and constant badgering of, hey, Sarah, help me out. I'm staring at a thing. I'm going to send you a picture, that elusive sensor, or this is like such a wide range of parts and, part numbers and SKUs. It can be really tough to keep up with. So thank you for putting up with me and others like me. I thought it'd be kind of neat if we could kind of jump into, what kind of calls you get regularly. Like, what are some frequent calls? And I'm hoping that folks listening can, obviously hear and proactively address some of these common issues that you hear and see.
So frequent calls, biggest thing is, I would say there's, we have like patients, or we can hear a leak in the anesthesia machine. Basically, leaks in the anesthesia machine is going to be our number one call. And most of the time with those, it's something, I don't want to say simple, but I guess in theory, yes, simple, but it's usually an issue with like an absorber canister either not placed correctly, or maybe that canister is damaged and needs to be replaced, or a breathing circuit, a breathing hose. Those are the biggest culprits of a leak in the anesthesia machine. Other times, just over the years, kind of found that there's certain parts on certain model of anesthesia machines that are prone to leaking, not necessarily a defect by any means, just, over time, parts need to be replaced. So
Wear and tear.
right, exactly. So it's just, okay, this certain model, sometimes if we notice there's leaking in this area specifically, let's check that area. And sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's rarely, we do get calls quite a bit where the customers feel like, oh, our vaporizer isn't working because our patients are light. It's rarely in those cases a vaporizer leaking. It's usually a different part of the anesthesia machine. Sometimes we do find that the vaporizer has an issue and we need to get it replaced. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing your regular service on your vaporizer, because that's important too. But a lot of times it's just different parts of the anesthesia machine that we need to address. So that would be our number one call, I would say. Other than that, probably just like monitor issues, different parameters, high CO2 maybe, or SpO2 sensor isn't working, ECG, that kind of thing. Blood pressure is a big one too. So pretty much all the parameters except for temperature is an issue. And depending on the model of the monitor, what's going on, it could be just an accessory that needs to be replaced. So maybe you just need a new SpO2 sensor. There might be a setting we need to adjust, again, depending on the monitor. Other times it's just placement, like with ECG leads, those should be placed close to the body. So we're talking like armpits and inguinal area. Sometimes we have customers that place them on elbows and knees. And I understand sometimes depending on what's going on, maybe you're doing an orthopedic surgery, you need to place them somewhere differently. That's fine. But those are just the recommended areas to place them. And then, are you using alcohol or some kind of gel with those clips? So those are some of the things we'll go over, just placement and condition our accessories in and settings. And sometimes if it's something that needs to go out for repair, we'll advise them, if it's not one of our monitors, please give the manufacturer a call. This may need to go out for repair, just from what you're telling us.
Okay. You just crushed a lot of really good info. So I want to kind of backtrack back to the anesthesia machine. Can you again call out those the frequent culprits of the best kind of first places to start that you see leaks occur commonly?
Okay, so number one, check your absorber canister. If it's a big leak, it's usually the absorber canister. So making sure, depending on the model of your machine, that it's on there correctly and it's tight and it's sealed. That would be the first one. Breathing circuits and breathing bags, just making sure those aren't cracked. I would say more often it's a bag than a circuit, just because people are tearing those off and you're not always pulling them off correctly, and you start to stretch that bag out around the neck and you get little holes in there and you don't see them. So that's why it's important before you even use your machine for the day to pressure test it. So you put your
You would
circuit down that you're going to be using, pressure test, because you might find that, oh, I have a bad bag. I need to replace that.
Okay, love that piece of advice. If you're using the anesthesia machine and all the equipment, test it the morning of, ideally.
Right.
In an ideal world, we're gonna do a leak test. Are you able to walk folks through a leak test over the phone?
Yes, generally. So if somebody is calling in because they're having issues, I mean, I understand that you're gonna have whoever is available to call in. If possible, it's always best to have somebody who's familiar with the equipment call in, just because it makes it easier to
Sure.
troubleshoot. Doesn't mean we can't troubleshoot with you. It's just we'll walk you through what every part is and how to manipulate it. But yeah, usually we'll walk through a pressure test.
I think let's run through it. I even thought it'd be kind of fun to simulate, a troubleshooting call.
Are you
Hey,
my
Sarah.
customer?
Yeah,
Call.
let me pretend I'm a technician. A lot of
Okay.
people that know me will get a good laugh out of that one, but let's do that because I love gathering everybody around the anesthesia machine in a clinic to do a pressure test, and I want to make sure we call out one thing if you don't on this part. But okay, let's just do a little simulation. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Sarah, this is Jimmy from ABC Animal Hospital. We've got some kind of leak going on here. We had a procedure earlier this morning. The patient was coming light a little bit. We're smelling some anesthetic gas. Something seems wrong. Can you help us troubleshoot what we think is a leak going on? Could be the vaporizer. I don't know.
Could be.
Probably not. But can you help me? Where should I start, Sarah?
All right. Well, first, Jimmy, do we have time to troubleshoot right now? Is there a patient on the machine, or is the machine available?
We're good. We just got it. We got it complete. We're sewn up. We're in recovery. Everybody's feeling pretty happy. So yes, we're good. I'm here with the machine and everything.
All
Got
right. So
the
if you're
folks.
in front of the machine, do we have an oxygen source connected and turned on?
We do. We got our H tanks in the back turned on. We got a drop from the ceiling. Connection looks good. I have oxygen flow.
Okay. So if you don't already, let's put a breathing circuit and a rebreathing bag onto the machine.
Okay. Does it matter if it's which type of circuit or the size of the bag? Do you care?
Smaller the bag, the better. So if you have a
Okay.
1 liter, that'd be great.
All right.
What kind
Got
of
it.
breathing circuit you're using, whether it be a Y or an F circuit, is fine.
Okay. I've got my F circuit here and I got a 1 liter bag. We're hooked
Okay.
up.
Take a look at your flow meters. Your flow meter turned off and the little silver ball resting on the bottom of the tube, not spinning.
Ball's not spinning. It's in place. Do you want me to go ahead and crank it up to a liter a minute?
Nope, we're going to keep that turned off.
Okay.
I'm going to have you go ahead and close your pop-off valve all the way. So screw that all the way down.
Okay. Secured.
Okay, and just to check on your pop-off valve, do you have a push button on top at all, or is it a
We
stand?
don't. Are you talking about that little Surgivet black little button thingy that is really cool and a good safety feature?
Also, Patterson has their own private label one, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
We also have a safety pop-off valve now that has a built-in push button on the top. So I just want to make sure we don't have that, because if we do, we'd also have to push that button down or put the cap on the port of the pop-off valve so we can do our pressure test.
All right. I just screwed it down. We're secure there.
We're secured. Okay, good. So now on the end of your breathing hose where you'd usually connect the patient, I'm just going to have you put your hand over that end.
Okay.
All right. And then we're going to hit the O2 flush button. We're trying to reach 30 centimeters of water on your manometer. You should see your bag get really full.
We're filling up. I feel like an explosion's about to happen.
Okay, it's not. Once you get to 30, let me know, and we're going to see if it holds. We're going to wait 20 seconds.
Okay. Just turned my oxygen off.
Okay.
And it's like it's like a slow, steady like decline on this pressure.
Okay, so what are we at right now?
It's falling from 30, 20, 15. It's like a gaping hole, Sarah.
Okay, well, that's a pretty big leak. So let's take a look at our absorber canister first. Do you know what type of anesthesia machine you guys have? Is there a name on it anywhere?
It's like a Versa or a Versa 2.
Versa 2. Okay, so you have a switch that goes between rebreathing and non-rebreathing?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So look at your absorber canister. There's a Patterson veterinary label. It's blue. It's usually needs to be front and center. Is that what you see? Is it off to the side facing
It's
the
kind
back?
of cockeyed a little bit.
Let's take a look at that canister. Let's take it off.
Okay.
You can use the Patterson veterinary label as your guide. It should be facing front and center. But the most important thing is there's a divider in that canister that needs to line up with the groove on the underside of the block. So just take that off, take a look, and readjust.
Okay, just took it off. Could have been it. I don't think so. I just screwed it back on. I think we're good. That's good.
Okay, well, let's just double check. Let's re-pressure. Let's do the pressure test one more time.
Okay.
So again, let's put your hand at the end of the circuit. We want to make sure flow meter is completely turned off. We're going to use the flush button.
Okay.
So press that flush button, and we're trying to get to 30 centimeters. Let me know when you're there.
Okay, we're there.
All right, perfect. So let's wait 20 seconds. Let me know if it drops or rises at all.
It's still dropping, Sarah.
Still dropping. Is it improved though?
Same challenge. It's falling fast.
Okay, let's recheck that absorber canister because since it was off to the side and we adjusted it and put it back where it belongs, we should have a little bit of improvement.
Sarah, wait, I just saw something. At the top of that canister, there are some granules. It looks like some granules could have got between that canister and the gasket or the thing under there. Is that a thing?
Sometimes it's not as common as having your canister on wrong.
You're probably talking about that groove under the gasket where it's got to line up just right with the canister.
Yep.
I think that was probably it, Sarah. Because if that thing is off to the side, it's not lined up properly. The trouble with that bad boy is you can snug it up. You can snug it up and it can look tight, look on, but there's like a 1 to 2 millimeter gap in that area sometimes. I'm thinking that was it.
I think you're right. So maybe we just retest again, make sure we're all adjusted well.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so same procedure as before. I'll put your hand into the circuit, flush to 30 centimeters.
Yes, got it.
All right, let me know if it's holding.
It's holding fast.
It's holding fast.
Yes.
So we're staying at 30.
Yes.
Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds. We usually like to wait 20 seconds.
Okay. It's holding.
All right, so 20 seconds later, we're still holding.
Yes.
All right, perfect. It's a passing test, so you can go before you get too excited, remove your hand from the end of the circuit.
Okay.
Open up your pop-off valve first.
Pop-off valve. So, do you recommend? I'm going to ask you. We're cutting out here. We're pushing into Q&A on this part. So, is it best practice to have a buddy system on that pop-off valve, Sarah? I mean, obviously, if you're a seasoned technician, I just think that's one of those areas you can't be too careful. You have to open that pop-off valve after performing that leak test. I know that's pretty basic, but
yeah,
that's an easy spot where nothing looks wrong. But if that bad boy isn't open back up, that's dangerous.
Correct. Yeah. So usually, especially when we're on the phone, that's one of the things we always remind people is, now that we're done, let's reopen that pop-off valve. But yeah, obviously, if that gets left closed, that can severely injure or kill a patient. So
Sure.
And when you say buddy system, are you just making sure there's somebody else double checking that?
When I'm showing, a clinic or a couple technicians how to leak test, I always say, "Hey, friend, I'm closing this pop-off valve. Watch me. Make sure I open this when we're done." Just to have a check and balance.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something we get calls on too sometimes is, we were in the middle of a surgery and the bag got big. First thing we're going to ask you is, did you check the manometer? Was the pressure rising? And, if it is, let's check our pop-off valve, make sure it's completely open, or just jump to that before you check your manometer, making sure that pop-off valve is completely open. If it is completely open, the bag is getting big and your pressure is rising, we could have a sticking pop-off valve, not because it's physically closed, but because maybe there's something in there that's causing it to stick. So that's something that you would need a pop-off valve replacement for. Okay. Other than that, if you look at it and the bag's really big, let's say, and the pressure isn't rising, okay, that's good. The machine's working like it should. The patient should be able to breathe. We ask other questions like, how is the patient breathing? Is it really shallow breaths? Is your waste gas system, we ask what the waste gas system is. We'll go into, is it operating correctly? Are we changing out our canisters? Sometimes there is an occlusion between the waste gas hosing and the actual system that's not allowing it to ventilate properly. And sometimes it's none of that. It might just be, sometimes the bag looks really big and it can be concerning, but as long as your patient is breathing okay, they're doing okay, and the pressure isn't rising on the manometer, there's usually nothing to worry about.
Right. And obviously we can't, it's hard to squeeze in every scenario, in this conversation. But like you said, to detect those leaky bags and circuits, I love a soapy water test. It's hard to see it visually sometimes, wouldn't you say? So, getting a little Tupperware dish, some hand soap or dish soap, get some soapy water, get a rag, wipe those bags down, wipe those circuits down, wipe the machine down. I always look for any connection point, hose or otherwise. All those are great sources. And around that, canister, anywhere oxygen is coming out, we're going to see bubbles rise, and there we go. Maybe found a leaky piece of equipment or product. Really quick, you mentioned occlusion valve. I love recommending those. Those are a way to close the pressure on a machine. Some machines have it, like the Versa has a knob you can turn to pressurize the machine or seal the machine. And other ones, those occlusion valves are they automatically open up when you release with your fingers. So that seems to be really a really good, safety feature you can add in there, inexpensive to add one of those valves that you mentioned.
Right, and those are nice because if you just want to give the patient a breath, you don't have to close your pop-off valve all the way. You just push a button or turn a knob, and then it usually just springs back open for you. And that way you don't have to worry about leaving it closed in the middle of surgery because I just gave my patient a breath.
The All Things Veterinary podcast is sponsored by Patterson Veterinary, supplier of products, equipment, software, services, and essentials for your practice. Patterson goes the extra mile to make sure you get what you need quickly, develops ways to help your practice run a little better, and backs it all with legendary customer service. Find All Things Veterinary at pattersonvet.com.
What is your recommendation on servicing a vaporizer?
So vaporizer service, usually for most models, we recommend yearly. So, and when we say service, it's not having a technician come out and check the calibration necessarily, because our technicians, when they come out and do service, they can definitely check the calibration and say, right now, this vaporizer is within spec. It's coming actually into our facility that's temperature and humidity controlled, and having the whole vaporizer, it's basically disassembled, and the parts that need to be replaced inside, different gaskets and O-rings, and they take it apart, they clean it up, they replace what needs to be replaced. I know there's like an internal thermostat too that they check out, but it's important that that's actually done yearly and it's done in a facility like we have here. So it's done properly. So our most popular program is the exchange. So we send you out a newly refurbished vaporizer, same model of what you currently have. You use the packaging, the new one comes in, you empty yours, package it up, you include a return shipping label, and you send it back to us. You keep that new one, you don't get your old one back. And that's a popular service. And like I said, we recommend that yearly for almost all vaporizer models, with the exception of our newer extended fill Tech 3, which is the one we sell brand new. That's a 2-year service cycle.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. What are some other common calls that you get?
So I'm trying to remember where we left off. I think we were talking about anesthesia machines. We went over monitors, I believe. Other than that, usually we get a lot on like oxygen builds. That's becoming more and more common. I mean, I know when I first started, I feel like it was fewer and far in between, but we do custom builds here at our Waukesha location. So people can call in, we can make you a custom oxygen hose. We also do other gases, medical air, vacuum, waste gas, nitrogen. We can custom build you a hose to work for whatever you need. So if you have a new build, you may need 10 new drops and 2 lines from your anesthesia machine to those drops. It really depends. So we can help you with that. If I know I've had some reps send me over blueprints, which I'm getting a little more used to looking at and asking, hey, here's the blueprint. This is what we're going to need. And I've done different calls, like team calls with customers and reps on site. So I can see what we're working with and we can discuss it. Sometimes it's easier than just emails back and forth. It's just a call, whether it's just a phone call or Teams call, Zoom call, whatever, to go over what is needed. And I think it's helpful for the customer to feel a little bit more at ease, like, okay, she's seen what we have and we've discussed, okay, these are how many we need of this is the length we need. and getting that stuff built and shipped. We usually can build and ship the same day as long as we have everything needed in stock.
Nice. That's really nice. What are any other kind of frequent calls or?
Usually, our more other frequent calls are, I have a AccuWave monitor. I need a new temperature probe or a water trap or something like that. Calling in basically for part replacement, and so just finding the right part numbers. Some of that stuff's a little bit more obscure, so it might take a little bit digging. Usually we can give you that part number right off the bat, but if sometimes we might need more information, there's some older monitors out there that are either not readily supported anymore, or we need more information to make sure, okay, if you have this model, sometimes it depends on the serial number. If you're going to need this type of ECG lead versus this one, might be the same model, but within like a serial number, there was a change at some point and they require different leads. So
Sure.
stuff like that, we're gonna know. Or if we need more information, like, can I just get a picture of the side of your monitor where the ports are, so I can make sure, is it a 6-pin or a 12-pin connection, so I get you the right part, so we're not doing a bunch of returns, get you the right thing you need right away.
And on that, ideally, if the clinic's calling in with a trouble or a part search, having make and model and serial numbers and all that kind of relevant info is super helpful on your end to track down the right part, I
Right.
assume.
If you have that information right away, great. If not, sometimes we might ask for pictures anyways, and you can just email them to the hotline email inbox.
Makes sense. You mentioned sensor connectivity earlier. I feel like in our conversations, you typically always recommend like spraying some alcohol to get that better connectivity. Would you say, or is that
On ECG clips, yes, usually you
okay?
use alcohol. You can use a gel as well.
Okay.
But for like SpO2, is that what you're referring to, maybe?
Yeah, I guess all connections or sensors.
Okay, so for SpO2, I know that's a big one as far as connectivity. How can I improve this? You can moisten the tongue with like water or something,
Okay.
not alcohol. But also another thing to keep in mind is some of the pre-meds that are being used might result in poor tissue perfusion, and that's to be expected, depending on what's being used and the amount. So that can be a problem. If you have pigmented skin, you might have issues getting a good reading. Other things that we do recommend is just trying different placement. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be the tongue. You can use the cheek, you can use the ear, toe webbing, either the prepuce or the vulva. Those are all acceptable places to try and get a reading. Or if your monitor has it available, you might want to try a reflectance SpO2 sensor or a rectal SpO2 sensor. Sometimes it's just the same difference, but I know like with our AccuWave, we have a reflectance one that you can place. At least I recommend usually placing it on the base of the underside of the tail and then just securing it with some vet wrap. Some patients, you may need to shave a little underneath the tail, but that's a good place to put it to get readings, especially if you're doing dentals. That helps a lot. But some monitors have that available, some don't. So just keeping that in mind. Another thing people don't think about either is just the overhead lights. So you're in surgery, you have those surgical lights on, that can interfere as well. So if we're troubleshooting over the phone, like I said previously, we generally like to do it when there's not a patient attached, but we do get people calling in with monitor issues and the patient is on the table, and we can it's not because the patient's in an emergency situation, it's just our monitor isn't working. It's still easier to do it when there's not a patient around, so they can focus on their patient and then we can troubleshoot later. But if we are doing it when there is a patient on the table for monitor issues, like we're not getting an ECG waveform or something like that, one of the things we'll ask them when it comes to the SpO2 is obviously their surgical lights on. That might be interfering. Just try putting your hand over where that sensor is. And if that seems to improve things, it just might be that light interfering. So you can always take like a small towel or something and cover where that sensor is, just to get rid of any overhead light issues.
Interesting.
Obviously, making sure we're not in the surgical field or in the way of the doctor or anything that's going to put the patient in jeopardy, which usually that's not the case, but just keeping all that stuff in mind. And another thing is making sure there's only a light on one side of that sensor. That light should be facing down towards the ground. So if your patient is in dorsal, so on their back, we want to make sure that light is on the underside of the tongue, so that's facing down.
Interesting. I feel like sensor placement connectivity is just a frequent battle at times. And
Yeah, and it's patient dependent a lot of times, or pre-meds that are being given that
right,
can cause issues too. And I don't want to say issues in the fact that pre-meds are bad. Pre-meds are good. We
sure,
pre-meds are a good thing, but just keeping in mind that might affect different things, even blood pressure. So it might not be really a monitor issue. It could be just what's going on, how the patient's reacting to the pre-meds.
fair point. We're intentionally affecting these parameters to keep the patient still and pain free, and we're trying to monitor parameters that are being weakened by pre-meds, anesthetics, I mean, we're kind of in a push-pull battle to begin with, I suppose. So
Right, exactly. So, I
yeah,
mean, we're keeping them comfortable and under anesthesia, a good plan of anesthesia, you might notice some of these things. So it's to be expected in some cases, but we'll do our best to find different ways to get the readings that we need.
do you have any pieces of advice for newer technicians starting out, tech assistants, folks working in a hospital? I mean, anesthesia is a daunting part of the day. Any advice for somebody who's, maybe they just want to learn that, they're getting into it, they're ready to continue advancing in their duties in the hospital. Any pro tips on how to gain familiarity with this topic?
Honestly, I'm a hands-on person and I learn best by doing. So, and I think that goes for most technicians because that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
So, and I think there's a lot to be said too for having it, when possible, just a background education, whether it be technical school or just reading different books
Mm.
that have to do with veterinary medicine for technicians. That can help. But if you can find somebody in the hospital, whether it be a doctor or a senior technician, who will kind of take you under their wing and help you out, I think that is great. Like I said, my first hospital, I was lucky to work with a really, really great group of people that did help me a lot. And I had some really good veterinarians there, really good technicians, really good assistants too, that have been doing things for a really long time. Don't discount anyone who's been doing something for a long time just because of their title. They have
100%.
a lot of knowledge. I can think of one specific assistant who was extremely helpful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's good advice. And I think it's also a good reminder for the senior technicians, doctors, folks out there to, look to share their knowledge. And I always think it's also helpful to invite some of the front office folks in the back to see, they're on the phone kind of communicating what's going on with the pet owner, and just come back and watch surgery a little bit, like understand what's going on and what we're doing to care for this patient, and the complications and the seriousness of what's going on back here. And it can kind of help communicate, them communicate that to a pet owner too,
Yeah,
in a successful procedure.
I can see that. I also think it goes the other way too. Sometimes some of us need to come from the back to the front to see how they deal with clients every day that are not maybe always as happy or
Yeah.
any of that. So I think that's really helpful. I know there's a lot of hospitals out there where you might rotate and you might be in surgery one day, you might be answering calls and, you know, being front office staff. And I think that's important so everyone realizes it's a team and nobody's more important than the other person.
Agree. And no, it seems that in this point in time, nothing's better than some good old fashioned cross training
Yeah.
to help in those times where we're a little shorthanded. And it's good for everybody to know a little bit about each area of the hospital to lend
Yeah.
a hand.
I can say I was way more nervous when I did front office stuff, which was rare. But when I was up in the front office answering calls and interacting with
Yes.
clients coming in, checking them out, that made me way more nervous than doing surgery. So my hat is off to all front office staff that do that every single day.
I don't think you're alone in that. That's a great point. This has been fantastic. It's I think a lot of what you help folks do, and the challenge is mitigating risk, and the points you mentioned on leak testing daily, if not only the days that you're using this equipment, replacing things. We're typically an industry that's reluctant to replace parts. And I'd say a lot of the equipment and monitoring specifically, I feel like a lot of progress has been made in the accessories and sensors that, over time we've seen some of those monitors intentionally have I hate to say disposable sensors, or, some the model to reuse things. I feel like that's going away more and more. But that aside, I think it's important to replace those breathing bags, replace those circuits, dry rot, like you mentioned, anesthesia, vaporizer replacement. The gases that run through these pieces of equipment are dry and under surgical lights and heat, and things dry out and just wear and tear. You gotta maintain your equipment, monitoring equipment, and anesthesia machine items. So
Yeah, exactly. And on that, I also want to just mention that when you are done with surgery for the day, we do recommend taking off your bags and your hoses, let your machine dry out, and don't leave all that stuff connected, because you're going to get a lot of extra moisture in that machine and those circuits and bags. That's going to start to cause problems not only for your patients, but also advance that process of, I have to replace more hosing and bags than I thought I would need to in this amount of time. And hosing and bags is really inexpensive compared to the problems that might result by not replacing them. I mean, a new F circuit with a bag costs $18. A new modified Jackson Reese non-rebreathing circuit costs $18. So I mean, even those Y circuits that you can find as low as like $12.
right.
So just keeping in mind the expense is not that great when you look at the complications that could arise by not doing it. So just replace those as needed. Have extra on hand always. So if there is a problem, we're not stuck using a duct taped circuit because we need to use it. We have an emergency coming in, but we don't have anything backed up.
Great point. And like you mentioned earlier, a lot of these common culprits that we see of leaky anesthesia machines are these inexpensive replacement items. It's not often, like you said, it's rarely the vaporizer. And the only time I see that is someone might have screwed the fill, where you refill the vaporizer, that can be cockeyed. I've seen that plenty. There's other things in the vaporizer, but most of the time the issues come with replacement parts that wear out the quickest. So
right, maintenance stuff, gaskets, O-rings, stuff like that. So, and that's another thing that's important, is that we're doing service on these anesthesia machines, replacing those parts every 2 years or more, or sooner if needed. And we do have service technicians that can come out and do that for you. They do a great job. They can check that, like I said, the output of your vaporizer. They can replace all those gaskets, O-rings, tubing, do a pressure test for you. I will say they do a pressure test for that day. So if you 6 weeks from now you have a leak, it's not because they did something wrong necessarily. A lot of times things change in that time period. So maybe you're using a different bag or a circuit. We've changed the Sodasorb, hopefully, because that should be changed every 8 to 12 hours. So that's a big thing. But yeah, just taking care of your equipment so it's working properly when you need it and you're not down and out or having issues with a patient.
that's a great call out. I think it's becoming more and more common to invite in a service technician monthly, quarterly. Patterson has a whole team and fleet of folks that can come out and help you maintain, keep an eye, and do a lot of the heavy lifting, and teach you while they're there, so that when they're not there, you're doing it frequently. In addition to regional companies out there, it is a great idea to have this important equipment, tested frequently. Or
Right. I mean, and when they're there, they don't just do anesthesia machines.
Sure.
They can also look at your autoclave, your dental machine,
Right.
X-ray machine. I mean, there's a whole host of things they can take a look at and help you with.
For sure. Thank you so much for performing this service and putting up with folks like myself.
Yeah.
It's much appreciated.
No problem. I mean, I enjoy what we do. I know, but we like to help people. I think customer service, especially now, is so rare to find good customer service. I mean, you go to the store to check out, how often does the cashier even look at you? So it's really important to me and our team to provide good customer service so you feel like we actually care, because we do, and we help you find what you need.
Couldn't agree more, my friend. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Sarah. We loved having you on, and keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Join us for more ideas and inspiration on the next All Things Veterinary podcast.